Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Infinity Love Wirework pendant, and this is what it looks like, the one that I've done in the tutorial here. So this is just a copper version, so you have the word love in the middle that then turns into this infinity symbol, and then I just attached it to some chain going up the sides there, and then attached a clasp as well. So it looks like that. So quite a nice and simple design, but obviously you have that infinity symbol with the love. It's quite a nice combination, I think. I've also got a silver version here that I've done, just to show you the different looks. Obviously you can make it however you want to, with whatever materials that you want to. So this is what they look like. So if you want to learn how to make this pendant, then keep watching. So this is then the wire that we'll need. Now I have two different gauges of the same regular round copper wire here. The first one is a 0.8mm, and this is going to be the base wire, so kind of be the structure of the piece. And then here we have a 0.4mm. This is going to be the weaving wire throughout. So we then need to cut a few lengths of wires ready here to be able to start making the piece. So what I have first of all is two lengths of the 0.8mm, so the base wire, but these are different. So I have one length that's a long one, and this is about 40 centimeters, and then I have the other length here that's a bit shorter, and this is about 30 centimeters. And then for the weaving wire, I've cut one length here of about 1.5 meters of the 0.4mm that we're going to use throughout the piece. So what we then want to start out with is making the word love that's going to be in the middle of the piece. And I'm using the long length of wire here to begin with. And what I want to do is start writing it across the middle of this piece of wire. So we have roughly the same length then on each side of the word once we've done it. Doesn't have to be too precise, just roughly. So I'm going to start towards the middle here. And I'm just mainly using my round nose pliers for this. And then I want to first of all put a bit of a bend, because I want to obviously start with the L. So I'm just going to get it started, bring it upwards a little bit, the long tail that I'm working with, right in that way. And then I'm going to bring it up, and then you want to think about how high you want the letters to be. Because obviously we don't want to make this too large, because then it'll end up being a really big piece. But also you want to make it large enough so it's not too small to kind of be working with and writing with the wire here. I'm going to go up a little bit from the first bend, then I'm going to bring the long end around my pliers gently, and then back down towards the bottom, and then I'm just going to bring it out, have a look. You can always reposition your pliers until you feel like this could look like an L. And obviously really the style that you do your letters in is completely up to you. You can do it however you want to. Something a bit like this. And then I'm going to go to the bottom, because obviously I then want to get the wire in position and ready for the next letter. So I'm just going to bring it back out, so we basically have a straight line down below the letters there. So like that. Then I want to have a little bit of space in between the letters, but have this come back upwards, because I now want to make the O. This O is going to be a little bit different than how I've made it in a lot of other ones previously with wire writing here. I'm going to bring it upwards, and you can adjust it as you go. That's always the better choice, because obviously once you've done it, it's kind of a bit hard to come back and adjust something when you've already made the whole thing. So it's coming upwards a little bit, and then I want to start curving around to come across the top of the O. So I'm going to place my pliers, and I want to just make sure that obviously the size of the O is going to be roughly half the height of the L. So I'm just going to roll it downwards and place the wire on my pliers. It's going to suit pretty well with the size of the letter here, this inside of the O. So something a bit like that, I think. Just keep looking at it, judging it as you go. And then I'm going to get my chain nose pliers, because I'm going to then place them basically right in the middle of the top part of the O. So I want to bend this long end of my wire back on itself this way across the top of the pliers. So just grab hold of it and place your pliers so the bend is going to end up being roughly in the middle there of the top of the O. Bend it back on top of itself so it's coming back towards where it's coming from originally. And then we have the wire bent like that, and you can kind of see you have a little gap in between the two different sections of the wire. You want to make sure to just close that up, so I'm going to put this at the back of the jaws of my pliers here and squeeze it flat, as close together as you can get them. So it's kind of like if you're familiar with making a prong, you want to get that nice and tight, that gap. And then we have that little kind of curve right at the top. If it's come a little bit out of shape, you can just readjust it. I'm going to place my pliers on that top bit, grab this long tail that I'm working with, or writing the letter with, or the word, back around again. I'm basically following the path of the O that I just made. I'm just coming back the other way. Something a bit like this. Coming around to the other side. Just going to make sure the sizing is right. Don't want to make the O too large or too small compared to the L. So try and imagine that we have a kind of straight line below all the letters here to obviously create a full word. And you can always reposition your pliers. And then I want to bring it back around towards the top. Now here's where it's going to, obviously creating the whole letter here, it's going to be a bit different, because I want like a little flourish on the top there. It's a different kind of O. So to do that, I'm going to grab the very tip of my round nose pliers there, right where this wire now meets the little bend that we just did when we came back around. Then going to bring it all the way around there, as if we were going around on top of the circle, the O that we just made, but I'm following the very tip. So this is going to be much smaller, and you might have to then take it out, and then I might just have to take my chain nose and kind of just squeeze it a little bit tighter. Just flatten it a bit, so it just kind of closes up a little bit, because obviously I don't want that little part to be too large compared to the rest of the O, just so it's a nice little flourish. So it looks a little something like that. And then we need to move on to the V. So you can swap between your round nose and your chain nose here. So I have my wire now coming a little bit upwards, and then I want to bring it back down. Again, remembering the height of the V is now going to be about the same as the O is, to make it fit to create a word. So bend it against your pliers, a bit downwards at an angle, and adjust it as you go. And you can always tighten it up a little bit by going on the other side of the angle there. And make sure then this part is nice and fairly straight. Then go down to where the bottom of the V is going to be. Place your pliers, bearing in mind that when you bend your wire against your pliers, it always adds a little bit longer length to the final piece. Bring it back up, obviously making the V, so we want that angle in. Bring it all the way back up. Keep adjusting it as you go until you're happy with how things look. And then to finish off the V and then get ready to go back straight into the E, place your pliers and bend the wire again. So basically just the equivalent to the other side. And then I want this tail to go downwards just a little bit to be able to go straight into the E. So it looks a little something like that. Just going to flatten this out a little bit more. Any little adjustments. And then make sure as well to straighten out your wire as you go, so we don't get any bends or kinks inside of the letters, because obviously we don't want that. So something a bit like this. And when you're happy with how the word is looking so far, then to make the E, I'm going to swap back to my round nose pliers. And first I want to make the top part of the E. So I want to keep this again towards the tip of my round nose pliers. So obviously it's going to be a bit smaller, the very top part of it. Kind of like almost like the top part of that O, so that little flourish that we added. Place your pliers, bring your wire back around them, coming over the top again, around till you reach the point where this wire is getting close to the V but not quite completely next to it. So there's that little bit of space in between the letters. Bring it downwards and just also do it kind of freehand. So you get nice and easy curves in there. You can also use your fingers, don't always have to use the pliers. And bring this upwards to create the bottom of the E there. And again, so you have your wire coming straight out, and if you were to continue writing here, so it's ready to make the next letter, but obviously if you're not, then we need to finish it off. Because you don't have to write love, you could also write something else. Just want to bend this back a little bit. Like that. And then what I just like to do to finish off after the E, to kind of say that this is the word, I like to just push it up a little bit and then put my round nose pliers in right after the letter, the very last letter, and then push it back down just a little bit. So you kind of get a little bit of a kick up, almost as if that's where the E ends. And then right after it, I straighten it back out again. So we keep that straight line below the whole word, but you can then see you have the full word there, and it's pretty good sizing with the larger letter and then the smaller ones, and then still keeping that straight line. So this is then the word. So now that we have the word in the middle of this long length of wire, we then have to add in the other length and start making the rest of the piece. So then before moving on to the next step here, the next thing I did was just make a little sketch of the piece that I wanted to end up with, just roughly here. And what I did when I made the word, and I did the word finished how I wanted it to be, what I did first of all was kind of just lay it down on the paper, a bit of an angle, and then I just drew around the edges just so I knew the sizing of the word. And then what I did was just roughly draw the word or write the word there first of all, just to know that this is where the word is going to be. Then I took the word on the paper, went from that and kind of started sketching the rest of the shape that I wanted around the word, obviously to create that infinity symbol, and also to get an idea of where I wanted to put my two loops, because obviously you want to try and get this as symmetrical as possible if that's the look that you want. So I felt that it would be the best way to just start doing a little bit of a sketch so I could use my sketch to hold my piece against as I was making it. So then as I go to this point and I've reached that loop point where I wanted the loop, that I can then kind of stop, make sure I make the loop in the right place and continue. And also to use this to help shape it as symmetrical as possible. So that's what I did. So like I said, wrote the word first at an angle, and then I drew these pieces in as symmetrical as I thought I could. So that's the point where we're at. So I'm going to keep referencing back to this as well, as I'm going to shape the piece along the way. But what we need to do first of all, before we really need to shape much of it, is incorporate the other length of wire. And I then also get my weaving wire ready here, so I'll bring that out. And then I want to first of all kind of bring these two together. So I'm going to take the short length of wire first of all. I want to attach my weaving wire to this. Now as for the weaving wire, I'm not starting from one end, because again I'm going to start from about the word, and then we need to work from there in each direction. So we also need to start from about the middle of the weaving wire, just like we did with the word. So we have roughly an equal length on each side of the weaving wire there. I'm going to put the weaving wire behind, again starting roughly the middle of this length of wire, not completely, because I'm going to start from this side of the word. So I just want to attach the two lengths of base wires together, and then I'm going to move on from there. And I just do that, first of all attaching the weaving wire to this base wire by coiling it around once, and then I'm going to go straight into the weave that I want to use. And in this case I'm using the diagonal wire weave. I have a more detailed tutorial where I show how to do that. I'm obviously also going to just go through it here. So I've gone through this once, gone around this base wire once, then I'm going to bring in the other base wire here with the word, and I want to push this wrap that I just did around the other base wire quite close to the word, and then I'm coming from behind and below the bottom base wire, then go across the top of both of them next to the previous wrap like that. You can move the weaving wire up and down the base wires a bit as well, so don't worry too much about it. Then I'm going to come up between the two base wires and kind of just pretend the word isn't there. Obviously you want to just be careful that you don't catch on it and maybe pull it out of shape, but right now just kind of pretend that these are two base wires that we're wrapping around, because obviously they are, but just bear in mind you have the word. And then wrap around the top one on its own and down behind. So I'm just going to do another one here, just so it's a little bit more secure. Come around the bottom, down between the two, to wrap around the bottom one on its own first. And then around the top of both of them, down behind. And then up between both of them here. And across the top of the top one, the front of it here. And again down behind. And all the way back to the bottom wire. And then what I'm going to do is just push these wraps as close to the word as possible. So basically right in front of where the L starts. And just make sure that it's still, the word has kind of stayed, so you have that straight line underneath. That's another reason why we wanted that as well, because this new base wire is now going to lay straight below that word. So we have one tail of the weaving wire and the tails of the base wire on the other side. Don't need to worry about them now because we're going to be working in this direction. So all we want to do now is get below the word over to the other side of it to be able to have a weaving wire basically on each side of the word to work with. So all I'm going to do is start wrapping around the bottom base wire here on its own, making sure I also push the wraps tight every time I do one, all the way across the bottom of the word until we reach the other side there, where we can then start to pick up the weave again, the exact same one by using both base wires. So just do this until you reach that point. So now then reach the other side here of the word. Obviously make sure the word is pulled close to the first few wraps you did, the L there in front of it. Then I'm going to go straight back into doing the weave that I did on the other side. So I've already done the last wrap there, the single wrap, so I'm going to go in and do the wrap across the top of both of them. And around the back, come up between the two base wires, and then once around the top base wire. And then down behind again. And then you can see that's just picking up the same wire weave that we did on the other side of the word. So just continue this for a while. You want to do a little section of the weave here now, because then where we're at, if I grab the sketch here, we've pretty much done the word now and we're wrapping on each side. So we're just going to obviously do one side at a time, wrap one side at a time here. So I want to wrap a little bit so I have enough to reach across the top here on that side over to the first point of where I'm going to add a loop over here. Now as for the other side of the word, obviously this is then going on the bottom part of it, and the wrap you have to do over here, the wire weave, that section's got to be quite a bit longer to reach the loop on that side. So that's kind of how the structure is, as you can see. So basically you want to wrap on both sides of the word here until your sections of wraps are long enough on each side to reach the loops as well. So now that I've done some weaving in those sections before and after the word there, and I'm not at this point here, obviously trying not to do too much, I'm just going to get the sketch back out because I then want to reference this. So I'm just going to lay this down, and then we have the word in the middle there where that fits, that's already prepared, and obviously we've then drawn in the shape, the rest of it there. So I'm just going to place the word on top of the word on the sketch, and now I want to start shaping these sections a little bit, also to make sure that I haven't weaved too much. Obviously you can always undo it if you have, but I'd rather try and catch it before I weave too much. So just place it exactly where I want it to be, and then I'm going to put my finger, I'm just going to do this end first, I'm going to put my finger towards the end of the word to make sure that that doesn't move and bend, and then I want to start shaping this weaved section and give it that curve, so it's going to match up and end up over where we're going to run into that first loop that we're going to do. So that's kind of, like I said, the point that we're at. And it's also then to check if it's a long enough section of weave yet that we've done of weaving. So I just like to grab the ends of the base wire there and then just kind of pull it. It gives it a nice curve rather than try and shape it with pliers or work with it up here. I find that's the best curve that you'll get, a bit more natural one. So I've curved it here and I can see that it's almost exactly on the right spot where I need to add in that loop. I can see, I think I'm just going to add one more, basically you can call it section of weave here. So just continue that, but keeping the curve in there. Because then that's what you can do if it's not quite long enough. You just add a bit more weaving and you can pretty well judge how much more you're going to need. Just like that. And I think that should be enough. Place it back on and then just check it there. I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to actually make that loop. I'm just doing one side at a time here. So what I want to do is the loop needs to be made so it's on the outside of the piece, which means we're going to make it on kind of, you can call it the outside base wire as well. That's then the wire that's actually we use to make the word with, which is then the longest one in this case. So I'm just taking some 6-step bell making pliers here. You can also just use round nose pliers. I just like to use this because then the loops on both sides, by using the same step I make sure that I get the exact same size loop. But round nose pliers would work fine too. And I want to separate them just a little bit because I then want to place my pliers right after where I have the last weaved section there, the very last wrap, and just get your pliers in there the best you can. And then I take only that one outside wire, start wrapping that around the pliers. Just need to do it a little bit gradually, like that, and I'm going to come all the way around, and then I can start repositioning my pliers because there's obviously not really space in between the wires to get in there. So I just swap position, and then I also want the loop to be a little bit closer, so I'm just going to roll my pliers a little bit and then pull it all the way around the pliers here and then reposition again. And I'm coming around the front of the piece here with the base wire. Bring it all the way out to the same side, the same direction that it was coming to before. So basically, the wire is exactly the same, we just added a loop to it. Make sure it comes in the same place, so it ends up lying right next to the other base wire in exactly the same way. We just added that loop. So just keep adjusting it until it sits nicely. And basically it goes right back into being in position so we can keep weaving here. I'm just going to bring this around, and I've then added the loop there. So what we need to do now is get to the other side of the loop to continue the weave on this side of the wrap. So same principle as the word, I'm just going to wrap around the bottom one of the base wires, the one that we didn't add the loop to, coil around that one as much as we need until we reach the other side of the loop. We can then again pick up the exact same weave and then start doing a weave section again on that side. That's obviously then going to complete the bottom side of that side of the pendant. So just judge it until you feel like you're at the place where you can start incorporating both wires together again, and I feel like I can do that now. Just going to make sure I straighten this back out before I get to those sections of the wire with the weaving, like that. Go straight back into the weave, go around both of them, up between the two, and just around the top one on its own, so you can see the exact same weave that we'll keep picking back up again. And then just keep weaving here for a little section again, so we can try and roughly get it the length that it's going to be below the loop and all the way back up to the word, so the bottom part of that side. Now as for the other side, it's the exact same principle. So obviously that is just the bottom part we're doing first. Place this piece, so mainly a word, back in the same place. I put my fingers on top of it so that doesn't move, and then I want to pull this on this side around and start shaping this as the bottom part. Obviously try and then also start looking at the two sides together to make sure we'll get them as similar in size as we can, the two sides of the pendant, but also shape-wise, as symmetrical as possible. And then bring it upwards, and I can see I just need a few more wraps here until I actually reach the loop, but otherwise it's the exact same principle. I'm just going to wrap a bit more of the weave, do the loop in the exact same way that I did over here, and after the loop I can pick the weave back up again and then weave the top section on that side until we then have a long enough section to reach the word on the other side there on the top of the word. And then once we're in that position, all that's really left to do is shape those last sections and then obviously finish off the piece. So now that I reached this point here, well, I've basically completed this shape and I'm happy with how it sits. What we have left to do is then finish off the ends obviously, but also secure them in place, because you can see it's all loose in the middle. And we want to get that kind of infinity look as well. So as you can see, I just completed the last section of wrapping at the top and then also at the bottom there. So what I'm going to do now is just do one at a time. And we just try and keep the shape, but we just have to manipulate the base wires here a little bit. I'm just keeping the tails for the weaving wire on for now, just in case I want to do an extra wrap or something, once I've positioned these in place. So I'm just going to bend these, because then what I want to do is, if you look at yours, this little space that I have between the O and the V, that's where I want to get my base wires in through there from the top. So I'm just getting the very ends of my base wires through there. So just do this obviously carefully. You don't want to put a big kink in the wire, but we have to just manipulate it inwards there. Pull it all the way through, and it might go a bit out of shape, most likely just like mine did here. But just gently push it back into shape, because you still have the basic shape that you already did when we were making the piece. And pull it all the way through, and then just take a bit of time here and reshape it if you need to. Make sure the piece is flat obviously. And then we need to start getting this in the right position. And again, you can always bring the sketch back as well. It's always handy to have nearby, so we can keep referring back to it. Making sure I'm getting the shape in place. And then where I finished off the weave, I want to get the base wires through that gap, so the end of the weave is going to end up sitting right up where that base wire that we wrapped around by itself under the word basically meets up with that. And I'm not going to 100% get it in place now. This is just to get them into the right place where I want to finish them off. Then I'm just going to do exactly the same with the one on the other side. But here we're going through the same place, but obviously we're coming from the different angle. So I'm going through there with both of the base wires. Just do it as carefully as you can. But here, because we're coming from above the word, this section, obviously be careful not to pull too harsh on this, because you don't want to then pull the word or the letters or anything out of shape. But this is then going to sit in the little gap between the O and the V, but on top of the word there, so right in between the letters. Take a bit of time manipulating your wires into exactly the right positions. Again, here, right at the end of the weave, you want to sit and be the part that connects to the letters there, or the word. And then before I continue, I just want to refer back to my sketch. Just double check I'm happy with everything. And also, I don't feel like I need to do any more wraps here, which it'll be a bit tricky with how we've done the base wires now. But I feel confident enough now that I can get rid of my weaving wire. So then to finish them off, some of the wires here. First I just want to get rid of the weaving wires. So I've done my final wrap in the weave that I did. And then I'm going to go in and cut off the excess. The very final wrap that we did around a base wire was around a single base wire. And that's ideally always how you want to finish off your weaving wire. To make sure you're wrapped around a single base wire. That's the most secure way of doing it. And I'm also going to cut off the excess wire on kind of the inside of the piece. So if you can get your cutters right in there. Obviously we're kind of a little bit limited for space. You could also cut off the excess weaving wire before you bend the base wires around here. I just feel a bit more comfortable doing it after, just in case I wanted to do a few more wraps or I wanted to use it for something. Like that. That's where flush cutters really come in handy as well, because it is a bit easier getting in there. I just want to make sure I then squeeze down the very end of it. And then cut off the other one as well. And then what we have left are the base wires here, so the excess of them. What I'm going to do with that is we obviously want to cut them off, but we also just need to make sure we can fully attach them, so it's not going to be moving around too much while we're wearing it, or at all really. So what I want to do is kind of have these base wires wrapping around those wires from about around the word that they're already wrapped around a bit, but kind of a bit more completed. But what I want to do is only have that one wrap with each base wire basically. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go in and cut off the excess of the wire, but have about 1 millimeter or 2 right after where they're wrapping around. So go and cut that off. Something like that. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and we then want to squeeze them a bit tighter, because basically what we want is for these little ends that we now have left to wrap all the way around that wire that they're wrapped around, whether it's the letters here, whether it's the bottom one on the other side. So just take a bit of time to make sure to squeeze them in, because that way you get it nice and tight and securely fastened, so it's not going to move around, but also we finish off the ends nicely. So you spend a bit of time, and I like going in, you can do one wire at a time, kind of press it down and then roll my wires a little bit in the direction that they're going around that base wire that they're wrapping around. So squeezing them nice and tight around there. Obviously the same on the other side. Just leave a little bit of the ends left. Cut them off and then squeeze down the very ends so they wrap around fully. And basically the ends of that wire you just cut off meets up with the back of themselves. That's what makes them secure. So just like that, spend a bit of time squeezing them in until you're nice and happy with how it sits, and it's also nice and secure, so when you kind of move it a little bit, obviously you don't want to pull it too much out of shape or anything, but you move it a bit that it's not moving around on you or anything with those attachments. So there you go, you've now finished off all the ends as well. What there's left to do now is really just use whatever kind of chain you want to for this. Obviously you use those loops to attach that. So I'm just going to use jump rings on each side, attach 2 lengths of chain, 1 on each side, and then have a clasp at the back. However you want to do it, if you want to attach something else to it, that's completely up to you. But then this is the centerpiece and the pendant itself. So I then attached my chain to my piece here, to the pendant. So obviously it's ready to wear, and also whatever clasp that you want to use. So I just used a lobster claw clasp here with an extended chain, just to give it a little bit extra play with it. So this is what it looks like. So it's going to hang nicely from the neckline and give that infinity design look, and then with the word love there in the middle. You could easily write some other words as well, it doesn't have to be love. That's just what I wanted to do for this one. So that's the copper version that I've done in the tutorial here, and I've also got the silver version here. So obviously you can use whatever you want to, but this is what they look like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these wirework wings, and I've turned them into a necklace in this case. You can kind of think of it, if you want it, as like a guardian angel piece of jewellery as well. You can also use the wings for whatever you want to. So this is the necklace I'm going to show you how to do. So I made each wing separately, and then just attached like a gemstone tassel there in the middle, in the blue and clear gemstones, and then attach them onto a chain. So it's going to hang really nicely on the neckline and dangle like